Good evening to
Good evening, everyone. Bonsoir, Monsieur David.
David, where is David? I can't even see him.
Yeah. I can see him on the top line over there, next to Vidhi and Anirudh.
Okay.
Bonsoir, Monsieur. Happy
Vous m'entendez?
congratulations, huh?
Ici.
Hi, David.
Bonsoir.
Thank you,
Hi.
sir.
Bonsoir.
How are you?
Très bien.
I don't. Merci.
You're back
Oh.
now. Oh, you're back now. You're back now. We lost you. We lost you there for a minute. We lost you there for a minute, but it's all good. It's all good. Okay, David, we have almost 50 people who have already joined us.
Okay.
So,
Wow.
welcome everybody, first of all, in this wonderful session with this great individual called David. I would request you please to keep your mics on
Off.
mute. Please keep your mics on mute. Otherwise, I'll have to mute everybody. Please keep it on mute. Um, so this wonderful session, David is the owner and winemaker of Champagne Bourdaire Gallois. It's in Pouillon, which is the north of Champagne. I've been personally to his place a couple of times. Once, I think it was in 2015, David, and the second was in 2018 that I was there. And David's hospitality it's just out of the world. Anybody and everybody who comes in touch with David is literally taken aback by the kind of hospitality he gives to every person who comes to his domain. He personally takes care of you. He doesn't let anybody else do it. He personally takes care of you. He gets his champagnes. He gets you to the tasting. He is there with you till the end, till you actually leave from his. And that's the great part of this individual. I'm not going to take too much of your time. Just a little bit about Champagne is that, as everybody knows, that Champagne is actually the northernmost well-known region of the world, and this wonderful beverage has taken has been mysterious, as a matter of fact, to everybody for over centuries. But where David comes from is actually the northern part of Champagne. So it is the most northern part of where wine can be produced. So that's even more challenging, because the challenge comes because it's very cold there. The challenge comes that there isn't enough sunshine. So all those challenges for a winemaker to produce such wonderful champagne like he does is just amazing. So, without further ado, I am going to hand it over to my co-host, Aniruddha. Anirudh, are you there?
Yes, sir, I'm there.
Anirudh, would you like to take it from here and then give it to David later?
Perfect. With all my pleasure. So, first of all, good evening, everyone. Welcome to this great session, which has been organized by the two, you can say, most experienced hospitality and wine professionals there. And so this session is basically on champagne, as it has been already introduced to you. And David is a person who has tons of knowledge when it comes to champagne. He is a champagne producer himself, as Mr. Kunal called himself told you. And yeah, if it comes to champagne, I guess this is the best opportunity for you all to learn what exactly champagne is all about, what it takes to make a good champagne, the facts and the figures which are just related to the viticulture and the vinification process, how David actually makes his own champagne. Talking about the grape expectation, this is one of the best wine academy. You'll find it all around the country, since it is just because of the people who are attached to this. Uh, Two of the people who I just mentioned, Mr. Kunal Kaul and David, these are the two people who have already taught me. And yeah, this is the best you can do to get yourself enrolled in this kind of academy. And there are certain wine and spirit education trust courses which this academy allows you to do. And personally speaking of my own interest and my own certifications, which is level 1 and level 2 right now, Kunal Kaul sir was the one who taught me for these kind of sessions, and he's just amazing. And trust me guys, he knows the nitty gritty of each and everything. What the matter is, what should be taught and how it should be taught. So I guess it's a kind of a booming opportunity for those people who really feel to get enrolled in some kind of courses which has the worldly recognition. Apart from it, I've already met Mr. David 2 years back. Yeah, David.
Yeah.
So I'm just looking forward to have a great session with all you guys. So over to you, David.
Before you start, I just want to share. I'm not going to interrupt after this, David. I promise. But I want to share this.
Me too.
Yeah, here you go. It's a wonderful evening for a bottle of Bourdaire Gallo, and obviously I'm not going to share it with anybody. I'm not going to share it with anyone. I'm going to have it all my own, but later. So all yours, my friend. David, please start.
Yeah. Okay. So good evening, everybody. I'm so sorry because it's the first time I will use Zoom and try to share with you pictures and video. Conal, I sent you the link. I don't know if you received it
I received it. I received it.
Okay, so perfect. So first, I will introduce a little bit the Champagne region. So, like said Conal, we are the northern region of wine in France, and the Champagne climate is really particular because we have two influences for the weather. We have the ocean influences from the sea, from the west, and the continental influence. So this is always a fight of these two different climates, and this is why it's complicated to produce grapes and wine, to make wine in our region. So I will try to share a first picture. Non, c'est pas ça. Ah.
Yeah, we can see. Yeah.
Okay, perfect. Okay. So you can see all the Europe region. So you can see my mouse with which move on
Yeah,
the
we can see.
Okay.
We can see.
So this is the France region. So we have this ocean, Atlantic Ocean influence, and the continental influence come from the low. So I need to move that up. Sorry. Why I can't move the other? Toc. No. Carte de France. This one. Toc. Up. So this is the France region. So all the ocean is here, and this is the Champagne region there. You have Paris here. So we are to 1 hour from Paris to the east, and it's for
David,
yes?
we can't see the map. See the map?
You can see the map? Ah.
No, I can't see the map. We can't see the map. Do you have PDF? Maybe you can open
yes,
a PDF.
I don't know why you can see because you saw it too.
Yeah, I'll.
Do you see now?
No.
No?
No.
You see this one?
No.
No.
So let me do one thing. Let me see whether I can share from my end. No worries. Let us.
You see the first one, but not now?
No.
Partage.
No. So let me open your presentation. Maybe I can open the champagne. Let me open your presentation. Okay, 1 minute. Give me a minute.
Okay.
Yeah, so that I can share and you can talk. Okay. Why don't you stop sharing? Oh, yeah, there you go. I can see yeah, I can see now. Yeah. You can please carry on. Please carry on.
Okay. So this is the France country. So all the ocean is here, ocean is there, Paris is there, and this is the Champagne region. So the Champagne region is on three French departments and 5 regions. And this is why there is a conflict from the weather, come from the sea. It's just from Reims to the west coast. It's just 800 kilometers. So it's really close. And this is the rest of Europe there. So it's for this here is the region of the fighting of the two weather. Sorry. Okay. Yep. This is our soil. You can show the soil?
Yeah.
I would like just... comment je peux faire pour revenir... non, c'est pas ça. I'm so sorry. It's my first time, so...
No, you can... I can see your soil, yeah.
You use the picture, but I would like to see you and I can't see you now. Why?
But we can see you. You can talk. We can see you.
Okay. So the region of Champagne is on chalk. So chalk is the million and million years of sedimentation of all the dead animal in the sea, and this is what you can see here. So the chalk is really good for the vine because there is a lot of air inside, so it's a good water reserve for the vine during the summer. Because with the continental influence of the weather, we have not enough water during the summer. So it's for this soil is really good for the vine. I would like just to see you again. Why I can't?
Because you're sharing the screen, so
so I need to close everything and to see you.
No. Yeah, you'll have to minimize it, then you can see.
Like this, but I can't see you.
Yeah.
Why?
Yeah. Can you see us now?
Okay. Yes, I can see. Okay.
Yeah.
You see me or you see just my screen?
Yeah. No, I can see. We can see you and the screen both.
Okay. Why?
It's okay. You can continue. It looks good.
Yeah. So Champagne is it's 34,000 hectares. It's not a big vineyard for the France because, for example, Bordeaux or Languedoc is really more bigger. But the characteristics is we are on 5 departments. So from the north to the south, there is 200 kilometers, and from the east to the west part, there is 150 kilometers. And there is a lot of small hill or river. So it's for this we have a really good diversity because we have a really good diversity of climate and some variability of the soil. Because the biggest part is the chalk, as I explained, but we have some vein of clay and some vein of sand. And this is a characteristic of my region. So in Champagne, we produce 300 million bottles per year. So it's a small production. It's okay? Yeah.
Yeah, carry on.
Yeah, okay. The biggest part is produced by the big houses. In Champagne, the characteristics is 80%, 90% of the vineyard is owned by the grower.
David, I don't think the screen is something else.
Okay.
What do you want to show on the screen?
Do you see something?
Oh, this is the same presentation I have, so I'll share it.
Yes.
No worries.
Yeah.
I'll share it.
Yes, if you can share it, it will be better. I'm so sorry.
Yeah. No problem. I'll share it. You stop sharing. You stop sharing.
Comment je peux faire pour partager
Just
pour
you just go to stop sharing. You know.
mettre le partage en pause. Ah, ok, la glisse.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Ah, ok. And you see me now?
Yeah, yeah. So you stop sharing and I'll start sharing. Okay. Just close all your windows. Yes, now I'll share. Okay.
Ah, perfect.
Perfect.
So
Okay.
So the second page, please.
Second page. Okay.
So this is a map of the Champagne region. So you have to the north Reims, and to the northwest you have Massif de Saint-Thierry. I don't know. I can't. If I move my mouse, you cannot see. But Massif
we
de
can
Saint-Thierry.
see.
So, yes. So I come from this part of Massif de Saint-Thierry. All the green part are the vineyard in Champagne. So this is, you have the Montagne de Reims. You can see perhaps to the south of Reims. It's a right Montagne de Reims. So
Yeah.
this mountain start to the south of France, go to the west and up to the northwest. So, and the characteristics of this mountain is we are exposed to the east at the down, and the west part is exposed to the east, and the north part, like me, is exposed to the southeast. So it's a really good exposition. But the vineyard is open to the east, and it's for this we have a cold winter, because during the winter all the frost come from the east part, and it's for this it's complicated in our region because at the spring when the vine start to growing up, the buds open and the vine start to growing up. It's possible to have a really cold temperature in beginning of May, for example, and it's for this there is a really good high sensibilities of the frost, of the frozen during the spring. It's for this reason the part of this region of Champagne there is a lot of Meunier grapes. Because in Champagne, we use 3 grape varieties. So it's Meunier and Pinot Noir, it's red grapes, and Chardonnay, white grapes. The characteristic of the Meunier is the débourrement, so the buds opening is 10 to 12 days later than Pinot Noir and Chardonnay. So it's for this there is a lot of Meunier in this region because with the frost during the spring, finally sometimes the Pinot Noir and Chardonnay starting to open the buds and starting to growing up, and the frost arrives and destroys the buds. And finally the Meunier still in buds are protected from the frost. Just imagine the next harvest, for example, the harvest 2021 is already in the buds. Because the grapes, the creation of the grapes for the next years is made on the June from the years before. So actually, it's the winter, so the vine sleep, we have the buds, and all the grapes for the next harvest is already present in the buds. It's for this we need to protect these buds. Oh, perfect. To protect these buds.
So David, David, I just have a question. I have a question. Yeah. Anyways, Champagne is a very difficult region as far as a winemaker is concerned, because it's very cold, right? And the 2 grapes that you generally deal with is Meunier and Pinot Noir, which are the red grapes.
Yeah.
The black grapes. And because they're the black grapes generally need a little more sunshine to ripen, to reach that phenolic ripeness. But for you are compared to, let's say you were in Côte de Sézanne or down to Côte de Blanc or something like that, but you guys are right, even north of Reims. How difficult is it for you as a winemaker to make sure that this ripeness is achieved?
It's not a problem for the black grapes for the ripeness, because we don't produce red wine. We produce sparkling wine. So we don't need to have the phenolic maturation. So the phenolic maturation of the skin to extract the color and all the flavor, because we will just collect the juice. So it's for this, it's not the biggest problem. Finally, it's not to have a maturity because we don't produce still red wine. The biggest problem is to have a good balance between the sugar potential, so alcohol potential with the sugar, to still keep the acidity, to have the freshness in the wine, and to keep in the same time the sanitary level of the grapes, because we are. It's not like in Sauterne or when there is botrytis, when the botrytis develop on the grapes, that really fast destroy all the grapes and finally destroys the quality of the juice, and it's not possible to make a good wine. So how explain? The repartition of the grape varieties in the vineyard is really by the soil first, but by the climate. So, for example, all the Côte des Blancs to the south of Épernay, all the Côte des Blancs and Cézanne, Côte de Cézanne, there is a lot of Chardonnay. The biggest part of Chardonnay of Champagne is planted like this because it's an east exposition, but it's really on the chalk. You have only 5 centimeters of land, and then it's of earth, and then it's a chalk, deeper chalk. So it's for this, it's really good for the Chardonnay grapes. All the Meunier will be in the Massif de Saint-Thierry, my region, the west part of the Reims Mountain, and all the Marne Valley. So started from Épernay to the west, go to the Château Thierry and the door of Paris. A lot of Meunier in this region, Marne Valley, because there is a river. And with the river, there is more sensibilities with the frost during the spring, and there is more sensibilities to botrytis during the summer. And it's for this there is a lot of Meunier grapes part. And the biggest part of Pinot Noir is from the Montagne de Reims, but the east part, when it's right Verzy on your map, Verzy, you have Montagne de Reims and Verzy. This is the biggest part of Pinot Noir, and turn around the Montagne de Reims to go to Épernay. And the Aube region, so it's the southern region of the Champagne, so close to Troyes. It's to the back of your pictures. So Bar-sur-Aube, Bar-sur-Seine. In this region, Côte des Bars, there is 98% of Pinot Noir. So it's and it's really close to Burgundy. It's for this, if you can drink Coteaux Champenois, so it's a red still wine from Champagne, in this region, you can imagine finally the tasting of the northern Burgundy production, like Gevrey-Chambertin, because it's the same grape varieties, Pinot Noir, and it's the same soil. This part of Aube region, Troyes, it's the same soil, it's argilo-calcaire, it's argilo-calcaire. It's clay and calcaire from like in a Burgundy. It's not the same soil than the rest part of the Champagne. It's for this in the history of Champagne, for example, there is a fight in 1911 because at this period, the grower in the Aube region sometimes produce Burgundy, sometimes produce Champagne, and at one time they said, okay, now you should stop and you produce Burgundy or you produce Champagne. So you need to choose. So there is a revolution in Champagne in 1911, and now they produce only Champagne, sparkling wine.
But David, one very quick trivia that I wanted to give, and I think you'll agree with me, is that Champagne was quite an accidental beverage. In earlier times, Champagne, the Champagne region was more known for Pinot Noir, that the wine used to be made and sent to Paris and London. Am I correct?
No, it's not true because the Pinot Noir Chardonnay arrived later. In Champagne, you can find Gamay or other grape varieties. For example, we speak about old grape varieties in Champagne. So in Champagne, we can plant everything coming from Pinot Noir. So there is Meunier, Pinot Noir, Chardonnay, but there is a Pinot Gris, Pinot Blanc, Arban, and Petit Mélier. So it's old grapes. So these grapes are a little bit forget because there is a high production, but not high quality at the harvest time. Because just imagine when I was young, the harvest was in end of September, beginning of October, so really late. So we are the northern part of France region, and we have no long day. It's complicated to continue the maturation, to produce sugar with a high level of acidity. Is for this, in the story of champagne, for example, we practice dosage because the wine are too acidic. So we need to add sugar to make the wine drinkable. So this is a part of our story. And it's for this, the champagne is it's accidentally come with the bubble because just imagine when you pick up the grapes in October, the cellars are really cold.
That's the story. Yes, that's the story.
So the alcoholic fermentation start, but with the frost finally stopped during the winter, and the moine, the church, in the church finally in the cellar, they make the bottling in January, February, and finally the fermentation restart with the spring in the bottles. This is the story. This is how we created.
So for our viewers, two things are very important that David has just said. Is number one, there are generally what happens is a lot. The impression is that there are only three grape varietals used for making champagne, which is Chardonnay, Pinot Noir, and Meunier. But as a matter of fact, there are 7 permitted grape varietals in Champagne. In Champagne region. Most champagne houses only use 3. The rest 4 are sort of forgotten, but I think they're still used here and there. The second most important thing that David just said is that because it used to be so cold in this region, is that the winemakers used to add some sugar so that the fermentation could continue and some sizable amount of alcohol could be produced. But during the winter time, the fermentation used to stop because the temperature used to dip. And as soon as it used to go March, around March, the temperature used to rise again. And the fermentation process used to start because there was residual sugar in the bottle. And because of the fermentation restarting, there was this bubbles that used to come in the bottle, and that is how this accidental beverage became the queen or the king of whatever you want to call.
Exactly. And it's for this, at this period, finally, the champagne was sold with sediment in the bottles. So it's for this. At the beginning, the champagne was decanted before to be served. It's for this, at the same time, the champagne glasses are like this because to have a deep hole inside, because you can drink the biggest quantity of your wine until the bubbles, the air arrive in touch with the sediment and the sediment fall in your mouth. It's for this, the size and the form of the glass of champagne. It's like this. There is a lot of explanation about that. What can we say more? Yes, and about the grape varieties. So just to resume, for example, about the grape varieties. So these 3 most important grapes, Meunier, Pinot Noir, and Chardonnay. So the characteristics of each grapes in the blend. The Pinot Meunier will give the natural fruitiness and sweetiness to the wine. It's like white fruit and a small red fruit flavor. And the wine are really light, with a lot of maturity, not enough freshness like Pinot Noir and Chardonnay. So these grape varieties is really great to make a harmony between Chardonnay and Pinot Noir, for example. It's for this, usually there is always Meunier in the blend. For example, since until 10, 15 years ago, we don't speak about Meunier because he was the bad boy of the champagne. We always spoke about Chardonnay, Pinot Noir because it's more elegant, more noble. But Pinot Meunier, it's 32% of the vineyard. So you have a real interest and impact in the blend. For the Pinot Noir, will give the body, the structure of the grapes, of the wine. You can feel that in all the Pinot Noir you can drink everywhere in the world. There is a good characteristic with the sharpness, the sharpness of the Pinot Noir, which give a real good structure. And this structure will help finally the flavor and will keep the flavor more a long time during the aging. But in the same time, with aging, this sharpness can be really strong and impact finally the wine and can give austerity to the tasting. And the Chardonnay will give the natural freshness by this citrus flavor, really elegant. In French, we said aérien. So it's a really light, you can feel in your nose and really elegant. So this is the characteristics of the Chardonnay. So the Chardonnay will always give the freshness of the wine, will give the aging potential. So this few big houses who would like to make a really old vintage, really keep a long time on yeast, they will practice blanc de blanc. So only come from Chardonnay or white grapes, because we can add inside Petit Meunier, Arban, Petit Pinot Blanc and Pinot Gris. If you would like to make a really elegant and age-enabled wine, you will use the biggest part of Chardonnay, or 100% Chardonnay. So this is why with what the winemaker finally play to create cuvée, so this blend, there is no rules. Everybody can make what you want. So it's obvious we have this diversity, because each winemaker or grower can make the wine you would like to do. And finally, the blend, the aging, the dosage, and the origin of the grapes will impact the final produce. And it's obvious you have all this diversity of champagne. So I know in India, it's really complicated to have access to this diversity, because there is not a lot of champagne imported in India. But it's obvious. You can just imagine I have 6 cuvées. I produce 6 cuvées, so it's a 6 different blend and 6 different harvest. And finally, it's obvious it's a 6 different wine with different characteristics, personalities, for 6 different time to drink, for just aperitif, or to share with food, a different type of food. So this is all the diversity and the richness of the champagne. And unfortunately, then I explain, 90% of the vineyard is owned by grower, but 75 to 80% of the bottles are sold by the big houses. So in Champagne, we are 17,000 grower which produce grapes, but on this 17,000 grower, we are only a little bit less than 4,000 to sell champagne. So all the rest of the grower just produce the grapes, and at the harvest time, they pick up the grapes and deliver the grapes on a press center. So it could be a private press center, it could be a cooperative, it's a grower development, or directly to the press center of the big houses, and they sell the grapes. So this is what is a little bit complicated in Champagne, because finally, a lot of growers just produce grapes. So it's not agronomic view, it's just economic view, because they just would like to make money by selling grapes, and there is not this projection of creating wine. So sometimes that can impact the quality of the grapes pick up and deliver on the press center. And in the same time, when you are big houses and you produce million and million bottles, it's really complicated too to produce different small cuvées, because from the first bottles to the 10,000 million bottles number, you need to have the same quality, to have a regular quality. And it's for this, for example, in Champagne, we have one harvest in reserve, and we will play with reserve wine. So that will impact the quality and the profile finally of the Champagne wine, and that will increase finally the diversity. We always have reserve wine in the bottles of Champagne, not in vintage, because vintage comes only from one harvest. And it's for this 90% of the Champagne produced are just non-vintage wine, and it's only 10% are vintage wine. So it's not usual, because all the other regions produce vintage each year, but we will always finally play with this reserve wine, because with the climate, we have each year we have a really different characteristic of the harvest, and with the reserve wine, finally in the blend, we can have regular production, because we can make a correction finally of the characteristics of the vintage by the reserve wine. So this is a characteristic of Champagne, because it's not usual to can blend different harvests in the same bottles. So it's obvious we don't produce each year a vintage. We produce vintage only when we have a really high level quality during the harvest, and only with a few plots of vineyard or a few barrels or tank. There is just one big houses who produce vintage each year. For example, it's revered houses, which produce cuvée cristal. So the cuvée cristal of revered is the top of their bottles, but they produce crystal each year. So each year they make a vintage for crystal. For me, it would be complicated to can produce vintage each year, because there is only the grape from 1 year in the bottles, and with the variability of the harvest, it's complicated. But it's a selection. It's like this. what we can say more about that? Yes, a lot of grower, but a lot of growers sells the grapes to the big houses. On this little bit less than 4,000 grower who sells champagne, we are
Shall
only.
David, shall I move to the next slide? Next.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes.
Yeah, I think that one has growers on it.
But it's the information from 2018, so that a little bit change.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So you can show on the back. So there is 16,000 growers. There is 140 cooperative. It's the grower groupment for the pressing and make wine.
David, I'm sorry to interrupt. Would you, for our viewers, just in one sentence tell what what the difference between a grower and cooperative is?
Grower, it's just the people who produce grapes. Cooperative, it's a groupment of a grower. So to can fight in front of the big houses to negotiate the price of the grapes or the price of hectoliters. A few growers decided to make a groupment to can press their own grapes to have more power in front of the big houses by more volume, because the big houses need to buy grapes. So the cooperative is a groupment of growers. So the cooperative at the beginning just make the press to the big houses. Then they make the press and the fermentation. And on this 140 cooperative, there is 45 cooperative who produce their own grapes, own wine, own champagne from the grapes of the grower. So it's a blend finally of the grapes of different grower. The biggest in Champagne is Nicolas Feuillat, for example, which produce 7 million bottles per year. So it's a really big. At the beginning, the cooperative is just to have more power in front of the big houses, just to negotiate the price of the grapes and the hectoliters of the juice. And then there is 340,000 maisons, it's big houses. So the most important is Moët et Chandon, Veuve Clicquot from the LVMH group. But there is a lot of small big houses. In this big houses, maison, it's a negotiant. So you buy grapes and you sell bottles. So you can have your own vineyard, but just imagine, for example, Moët et Chandon, the biggest houses in Champagne, is owner of 1,100 hectares of Champagne on the 34,000 hectares. But they buy a lot of grapes to produce 30 million bottles per year. Because with 1 hectare of vineyard in Champagne, you can produce between 8,000 to 10,000 bottles per hectare. So just imagine, to produce this volume, they need to buy a lot of grapes from all around Champagne region. So for this, there is a lot of negociant big houses which buy grapes and make their own wine. So there is two options. They can buy grapes directly to the grower at the harvest time, or the grower can make the press. So the big houses will buy finally the juice, or buy the wine if the grower or the cooperative makes the fermentation himself, or you can buy directly bottle. So a grower can make his harvest, make the juice, produce his own bottles, make the fermentation in the bottles, make the storage, and when he need money, for example, call different big houses and say, okay, I have bottles on yeast to sell. Are you okay for this? The big houses, if they are okay, they can buy the bottles, just put the label on and sell the bottles like this. So it's for this, usually big houses have the brand name, so Moët et Chandon, Veuve Clicquot, and there is another brand name for to distribute finally this type of bottles in the supermarket or a secondary, not réseau, un réseau. So on the secondary market, for example, with a small restaurant or a champagne bar with another name, Veuve something or like this. So it's for this, and on your bottles, when you would like to buy a bottles of champagne, you need to look on the label or back label, because all this is right on the bottle. So I don't know if you will show on my bottles. I don't. There is a number here. You can see there is 2 letters and a number. I don't, right? So you can have finally the letter will indicate you the origin of the bottles. So for example, independent grower. I make my wine myself. So I am RM. RM, récoltant manipulant. So RM, récoltant manipulant, it's I produce the grapes. I make my own wine. I only with my grapes. Okay. So you can be RC. RC is récoltant coopérateur. So I'm a grower. I produce the grapes. I deliver the grapes to the cooperative. The cooperative makes the pressing, the fermentation, the blending, the bottling, and I just bring the bottles with the wine inside. But this wine comes from my grapes, but the grapes from other grower who delivers the grapes in the cooperative. So RC, récoltant coopérateur. So the grower produces the grapes, but sells the champagne come from the grapes of all the grower who delivers the grapes in the cooperative. So there is not his own grapes in the bottles. It's the blend of all the growers' grapes delivered during the harvest. You can be ND. It's a négociant distributeur. It's the same like RC, but it's not a cooperative who makes the wine. It's the big houses. So, for example, I produce the grapes. I deliver the grapes to Veuve Clicquot Press Center. Veuve Clicquot makes their own wine, but they produce bottles for the grower like me. And I bring the bottles from the big houses and I just label and sell. It's ND, négociant distributeur. Oh. And négociant, so the big houses are NM, négociant manipulant. So the big houses will produce their own grapes from their own vineyard, but they buy grapes from a cooperative or grower, but they make the fermentation in their own cellar and make the bottling, their own bottling from the grapes from all around the Champagne. So NM, négociant distributeur. So when you check the label or back label, you can see these two letters and that will indicate you if it's from a grower, a cooperative or a big houses. And the number after, it's each grower have a number attributed when we produce the grapes. So I don't know if you can see that. So you have a number and at the end 01. So this is my number and 01 it's my first brand. So if I have a second brand, you will have the same number but 02 and 03 and so I have just one. Yes, I have just one.
So which number is yours, David?
So my champagne identification number it's 27293. This is my number.
Yeah, and then in the end it's 01.
01 because it's my first brand, Bourdaire Gallois.
Yeah, so mine is also the same. So yeah, the number here and then 01 in the end. Yeah.
Yes, okay. If, for example, for a special market, I would like to produce a special cuvée, just, Champagne Bourdaire, it will be the same number, but 02. And I will deposit, finally, the name Bourdaire. Sorry?
Yeah, please go ahead.
Okay. So with this indication, you can check finally the origin of the bottles. So RM come from the grower, RC come from cooperative, so it's not the same of the grower who sells the bottles, he just puts the label on, and NM come from big houses. So you have the vineyard, the region, department, okay, so 300 million bottles per year, okay. So the next,
next.
So can you, the next please?
Yeah.
Yes. Oops.
It's coming.
Yes, no problem.
Is it there? Can you see it?
Yeah, I see, but yeah, it's so it's right on. Finally, 90% of the vineyard is owned by the grower, but it's not 70% sold by the big houses. It's now it's 80%, 82%, because since 10 years, how explain? There is not enough grapes produced in Champagne, but it was before the two last year. There is not enough grapes, so there is always a competition between the big houses to buy the grapes to can produce bottles. So finally, the price of the kilo of grapes increased in Champagne. So in Champagne, we have, I think, the most expensive grapes by kilo. So just imagine the kilo. The average price of the kilo, it's around 6.5 euro. So it's really expensive.
What is David? What is the mandatory yield per hectare in Champagne?
So what is the
what is the yield per hectare? How many grapes, kilograms of grapes can you have from one hectare?
It depends. It's 10 years ago it was 13,000 kilo per hectares. Until 2 years it was 10,000 kilo, and for example last year last harvest it was only 8,000 kilo. And perhaps it will be 7,000 kilo per hectare. It's not because we can't produce, because there is in the vineyard, but each year the Champagne organization, there is a syndicate of big houses, there is a syndicate of the grower, and each year in July usually there is a meeting to determine the level of quantity of grapes we can pick up in the vineyard, because each year we will adapt the production of the grapes with the quantity of bottles sold on the market. So the goal is to not create too much bottles, because the price of the bottle will fall down and the price of the kilo will fall down. So it's just to try to regulate, finally, to have a good balance between the production and the sales. The production of the grapes and the sale of the bottles.
Yeah, just for our viewers, the general rule for winemaking is that the lower the yield, that means the lesser the quantity, or the lesser the kilograms or the quantity of grapes that you have from 1 hectare or one area, the higher the quality of the wine would be.
Exactly.
In certain areas, where the quality of wine is not something that is looked upon, you'll have the yield which is very high, which makes a lot of quantity, but the quality tends to fall down. But in Champagne, it's very, very strict, and that's why you get such wonderful quality of wines from that.
Yeah. So in Champagne, it's really strict, but in Champagne, we always spoke kilo per hectare and not hectoliters per hectare. All the other region spoke hectoliters per hectare. And because finally, we produce a lot of hectoliters per hectare, because when the production, we need 160 kilo to produce 1 hectoliters. So when the harvest level was 13,000 kilo per hectare, we produce around 95 hectoliters per hectare. So it's complicated to say, oh, we produce a high quality sparkling wine, but with a high level, with high quantity of hectoliters per hectare. So that will fall down. But just keep in mind that we don't produce still wine, we produce sparkling wine. So we don't need the same characteristics as the harvest. We need to keep the freshness. So imagine with 1 hectare of grapes, for example, if you selected productive grape varieties like a Pinot Noir or Chardonnay, if you selected productive rootstock, because since the phylloxera, the European vine are planted on American roots, which resist to phylloxera hill disease. And if you it's like a sprinter. If you add a lot of you can run as fast as possible. So in 1 hectare of Champagne of vine in Champagne, you can produce 30,000 kilo per hectare. So it's totally crazy, because it's the double, the triple of the quantity, the volume we need. And finally, you will dilute the quality. So it's for this, the good goal is to produce between 12 to 13 kilo per hectare, because you can select the grapes at harvest, and you can be sure to have the quantity, the level at the harvest, and the quality in the same time. It's a really good balance. So it's always the problem in Champagne that I explained. So a lot of growers just produce the grapes. So if they have just economic view, they would like to produce more quantity and small volume, because just for example, I have 2 hectares of vine. I have 1 hectare of Chardonnay, 1 hectare of Pinot Meunier. Pinot Meunier, there is less production. Pinot Meunier is really more complicated to control, because the vine going up like this, so there is more work inside. There is more sensibilities of botrytis, for example, because with the global warming, the climate changement. When I was young, for example, when it was a harvest, I remember my grandfather said, "Oh, it will be a really good harvest, because the average weight of the grapes, Meunier grapes, is between 90, 80 grams." Wow, fantastic. Now it's 120, 130, 150. So the weight of the grapes increase. So it's really good, because finally the potential production increase per hectare. But Pinot Meunier have a really compact structure. And finally, with the increasement of the weight of the grapes, we are more easily botrytis problem and more early in the season, because when after the flowering, when the berries growing up, there is some berries who crash inside, and finally there is a beginning of botrytis inside the grapes, and you can't see it. And during finally the maturation, the botrytis develop inside and finally explodes outside the grapes. And perhaps 1 week, 2 weeks before the harvest, you can see, wow, there is a lot of botrytis everywhere, and you lose a lot of production, part of production.
So David, just for our viewers, interrupting you here. So David is talking about botrytis, which is a fungus basically, which sort of, as the global warming is happening and the temperature are rising a little bit. Earlier in Champagne, because it used to be so cold, there was not a risk of botrytis and having this fungus on the grapes. But as the temperature and the global warming is happening, even in Champagne and a lot of other parts of France, you get this fungus which can at times attack the grapes. And because it attacks the grapes, it sort of destroys the crop. So the winemaker and the people who are working in the vineyard, the owners, need to be very careful about this botrytis. It's a fungus. In Bordeaux, in Sauternes, this botrytis produces magical sweet wines, but in Champagne, it can totally destroy the crop. David, please continue.
Yes, because it's not the same botrytis. The botrytis in our region will totally destroy the grapes. There is not the good botrytis which increase the concentration of the flavor of the sugar inside the grapes. That totally destroyed, and we can have totally destroyed grapes with not enough quantity of sugar inside and still a high level of acidity. So it's totally crazy. So this is really particular. So it's for this in my region where when we have had a lot of Meunier, now there is more and more Chardonnay and Pinot Noir because the big houses would like to buy more Chardonnay. So we need to produce more Chardonnay, and they pay a little bit more. So it's for this. There is a lot of paradox finally in Champagne because. It's like I said, finally, Champagne is like an iceberg. There is a beautiful part, but the biggest part is under the sea, and it's the dark side of the Champagne.
Yeah, I know what you mean.
It's always, but there is the same rules everywhere. If you like to produce high quality wine, you need to have high quality in grapes. So the biggest part of the job, the work, it's in the vineyard. You need to produce the most quality grapes that you can extract the characteristics of the grape varieties, the characteristics of the soil, the characteristics of your climate, and to make finally in the bottles all the characteristics of your small region. And it's for this we have all this diversity in Champagne. Yeah. So Conal, I don't remember what is the next page, please.
I'll just move to the next page. Here it is.
Which is the market. Okay. It's crazy. I have number everywhere. Yeah. So in 2018, the first market of Champagne was United States, and it was the first years because before it was United Kingdom, the Royaume-Uni. So the biggest part of Champagne are sold as the export. So since 3 years, because before the first market of Champagne was France. So 55% of the Champagne was sold in France, but that changed with all the economic problem and the development of the Champagne sales, because a lot of new countries would like to discover the Champagne. Unfortunately, sometimes not by the big best example, because it's how to explain? Champagne is wine, but it's a sparkling wine. So the difference, it's just during the process at the bottling, we make something to make bottles in the bottles. I will explain later. And it's a wine, but with the bubble, you will increase all the characteristics of your wine. So the flavor, the acidity feeling, but the worst tasting at the same time. So it's for this it's really complicated to make, and it's really complicated to discover, because sometimes the first feeling is wow, it's explosive in mouth, perhaps too acidic, and it's really complicated to explain. It's for this we practice aging on yeast to have more maturity. It's for this we practice dosage in the same time. So just imagine, I think 7 years ago, some scuba found old bottles in the Baltic Sea. And this bottle was sent by Madame Veuve Clicquot in the beginning of the 19th century, and finally the boat fall down in the sea, and the bottles have a perfect aging condition because no light, it was in the dark, cold temperature, pressure outside the bottle to compensate the pressure inside the bottles. So finally they can discover these few hundred bottles, and they taste, and that was so beautiful. But just imagine the quantity of sugar had inside at this period. It was like a sweet wine, because it was a little bit more than 200 grams of sugar inside the bottles. So just imagine, it's so sweet. It's like if you bring a sauterne and you put bubble inside. It's totally crazy. Yeah. Just imagine at this period when Mrs. Clicquot was produce grapes, the harvest was only in October. So not enough sugar. So it's for this we can practice chaptalization in champagne. So chaptalization is addition of sugar before the alcoholic fermentation, just to have more alcohol at the end of fermentation. So now with the global warming, we do not add the sugar before the fermentation, alcoholic fermentation.
Do you add the sugar in the colder vintages, or not at all anymore?
No. The goal is we're looking for to have at the end of alcoholic fermentation 11 alcohol degrees, because with the fermentation in the bottles we will increase the alcohol level between 1.5, and the champagne rules is champagne should be between 11 degrees to 13.5 degrees. So it's for this we're looking for to have 11 degrees after alcoholic fermentation. With the fermentation in the bottle, we will increase and be around 12.5 degrees alcohol. But when the harvest was late, and if we have not enough sugar in the grapes, we can add to increase the alcohol potential about 2 points. So we can finally collect the grapes at 9 degrees alcohol potential, add the sugar to finish at 11 degrees alcohol. But the goal is to have 11 naturally, because when we have 11 naturally, we have less acidic, natural acidic in the grapes, and we have more fruitiness, more potential of the structure in the grapes.
Okay. Good.
So I don't remember what I spoke about. About the expedition. Yes, about the dosage. So just imagine, yes, the dosage was really high, and now reduce. And it's for this now we have a lot of champagne who are extra brut or non-dosage wine. So it's just we had not just small quantities or no sugar at the disgorgement time. So it's at the end of the process. So the expedition is yes. Now it's more than little bit more than 60% at the export and 40% in Champagne in France. Sorry.
So 60%, 67% is being exported, is it?
67% of the 60% of sales. Yes, it's not the same. It's
of the sales, I understood.
The sales, about the sale,
Understood.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
So just one little thing, David, because these terminologies are in French, so just for the viewers. So the top 10 exports in 2018, just wanted to, because they might not understand it. Number 1 is USA.
United States. USA. Yes.
Number 2
is UK.
Number 3 is Japan.
Yeah, Japan. It's Deutschland. Germany. Yes.
Italy, Belgium, Austria,
Australia,
Switzerland,
yes.
Mainland China, Spain, and Canada.
And Canada, yes.
Okay, great.
Yes, and I make the wish that we can see India in the next year in the
So,
top 10.
so
Why
I
not?
think I think this is why we're doing this session. So we need to start drinking some more champagne to get us in top 10, huh?
Yeah, yeah. We can explain more about the champagne process, about because this is the champagne area. Just for example, so I come from a small region. It's the northern region of Champagne, named Massif de Saint-Thierry. Massif de Saint-Thierry, it's a groupement of 14 villages, and it's around 900 hectares. So it was 80% Pinot Meunier 30 years ago. Now it's more than 40% Meunier, 55% Pinot Noir, and the rest of Chardonnay. Because the characteristic of a region, it's we are not on clay, on our chalk, sorry. So we are on sand and limestone soil. So it's really unusual in Champagne because the chalk will give really good mineralities, but it's really straight, really light. But our sandy soil will give really good mineralities, but it's the silicate mineralities. So you can feel finally small iodine, spicy feeling, and sapidity come from this sandy soil, and it's really fresh in the wine that makes you salivate, and it's for me it's really good because that excited your palate and ask finally to call to drink more or to eat something with, and it's really beautiful for champagne wine. I think so. On this area, so it's 14 village. I'm located to a village named Pouillon. It's a eastern village in this region, and our vineyards are located on 4 villages. It's Pouillon, Tille, Villers-Franqueux, and Hermonville. So it's a perimeter of 7 kilometers around Pouillon. So it's really close. The vineyard is composed by 85% Meunier, 5% Pinot Noir, and 10% Chardonnay. So we have not a lot of Pinot Noir and Chardonnay because our sandy soil and sand and limestone soil are really rich. So Pinot Noir and Chardonnay will produce much grapes, and it's not good for the quality because we should practice finally green harvest. So after the flowering, when all the berry started to growing up, we will cut grapes to reduce the quantity of grapes per vine to have a high quality, high maturity at the harvest time. So Pinot Meunier is really good for our soil. So our 5% of Pinot Noir and 10% of Chardonnay are planted on stress soil. So to reduce the quantity of grapes per hectare for these two grape varieties, we plant finally the Pinot Noir on on clay soil. So the clay will keep the water and will asphyxiate the roots. So that will reduce the vigor of the vine, so reduce the quantity of grapes, and finally increase the maturity of the grapes. And then I explained the Pinot Noir will give the body, the structures of the wine. And finally, we will increase this body with the structure, with the strongness of the soil of the clay. For this, we have 5% of Pinot Noir. And our Chardonnay, our 10% of Chardonnay are planted on pure sandy soil. For the same reason, the Chardonnay produce a lot of grapes. So on pure sand, finally, we will stress the vine because the roots should go deeper to have water, nutritive element, and that will reduce the vigor of the vine, and reduce the production, and increase the maturity of the harvest at the harvest time. And at the same time, we will increase the minerality and the sapidity, this salty feeling of the Chardonnay with the salty feeling of the sand. So just imagine our soil, it's like when you are on beach, for example, and you have sand in your mouth, that always dry your mouth and collect make you salivate and dry your mouth, and you will have that on our wine. So it's always, for example, with the Meunier grapes, we always said, okay, it's the white fruit and red fruit flavor. And sometimes we said, or Meunier Chardonnay. It's like a Chardonnay because we have this citrus feeling, this elegance that is unusual on the Meunier grapes varieties. The average age of our vineyard is 49 years old. Our oldest plant of our plot of vineyard was planted by the parents of my grandparents in 1922. We have more than 35% of our vineyard which was planted during the 60s, end of 50s and beginning of 60s, and the rest was planted during the 80s. And now finally we replant. So when the plot of vine is too old and there is a lot of dead vine inside, we replant, and we continue to replant Meunier, what is unusual in Champagne because the Chardonnay and Pinot Noir are more guests. We listen, yes. So I work on 6.8 hectares of vineyard, but I produce only 20 bottles per year because I rent a lot of plot of vineyards to my family, to my parents, grandparents, uncle, and to guarantee the payment of the rent, I sell a part of my grapes to the big houses. The goal, the deal, sorry, I have with the big houses is I produce the grapes, I pick up all the grapes, I make all the fermentation, I make my blend with the quantity I keep, and I sell the rest to the big houses. Because normally, when you have a contract with the big houses, you need to deliver the grapes to the press center, the grapes are pressed, and the juice is collected by the big houses. But for me, I can't determine the characteristics of the wine just by see the grapes in the cases. So it's for this, I do everything, and I know, okay, I have this volume to sell, I have this volume to which I can produce my wine. So I blend with all my production, and then the rest is sell to the big houses. Other characteristics, so we have a lot of Meunier grapes, but in the same time we have I practice no dosage finally on all my range. So the Champagne rules, in Champagne, when you produce a non-vintage wine, you need to keep on yeast before disgorgement and sales, minimum 15 months. And for a vintage, it's 3 years, but it's the minimum. All my range of Champagne stay a long time on yeast. So my first bottles, cuvée Tradition, this one, stay minimum 3 years on yeast. So like vintage rules. For example, my vintage, which I sold now, it's a vintage 2008. So it's 12 years on yeast. So this is the rules. What would you like to speak about, Conal?
Yeah. A quick thing. First, I think you talked about soil. So for the viewers, it's very important to understand that as when we're talking about grapes, it is not about a fertile soil. As a matter of fact, on the contrary, the grapes grow better when the soil is unfertile. Okay, the idea is for the wine, the plant, to struggle. That's what David as well just mentioned, to struggle. So when the wine struggles, it produces less quantity of fruit, but the quantity of fruit that it produces is of better quality.
Exactly.
If you give the wine a lot of fertile soil, it will give you a lot of grapes. Okay, but the quality of those grapes would be inferior. That is number one. So
dilution.
In Champagne, sandy soil and all those limestone, all of those soils are not very fertile soil, but they are perfect for growing grapes. They might not be perfect for growing potatoes or things like that, but for grapes they are very, very good. Very good soils. As David mentioned, once your fermentation has finished and the bottles are kept in the cellar, they're kept with a little bit of lees, which is the dead yeast left over from fermentation, which is left over from second fermentation. The minimum requirement in Champagne is 15 months. You have to keep it for 15 months. But a lot of Champagne makers, especially, not especially, everybody sort of keeps it over 15 months. Like just David said, his 15 months is his minimum, but he's keeping it for 3 years. So what's happening? That the quality of the Champagne is even getting better than what the minimum requirement that has been set by the government. A lot of Champagne houses do that. They I think for vintage champagne, it's 3 years minimum, David.
For vintage, yes, it's minimum 3 years. Yes. 3 years,
But generally, I think they keep for 6 years or something. I mean, most of the champagne houses.
That depends of your economic view. Because unfortunately, we have the possibility to add sugar at disgorgement. So finally, we have the possibility to sell the wine more young and add sugar to make the wine drinkable. But for me, it's the wrong way. It's better to keep on yeast because yes, just about the process, it's to produce champagne from the beginning to the end. It's the same process than still wine. The only one difference is when we practice bottling, we will add sugar and yeast in the bottle to make second fermentation inside to create the bubble. So, for example, to have 6 kilo pressure inside the bottles, we will add 24 grams per liters of sugar. If you would like to have 5.5, it's 23. It's like this. And we will add 4% of yeast in the volume to be sure to make the total fermentation in the bottles. Because which can kill the yeast is alcohol, acid, and in the bottle, in the wine, just before the bottling, we have alcohol inside, we have acidity inside. So we will have a strong yeast to be sure to have the fermentation and in a good quantity to be sure to make the total fermentation inside. Because if there is not all the fermentation make in the bottle, we will have not enough bubble, but we will have residual sugar, which make finally a natural dosage inside. So we need to keep that in our mind. So during the aging, there will be autolysis of the yeast during the aging on yeast. It's for this we keep the bottle. When we said on yeast, it's like this because all the sediment will be here finally, and we will have a large area of contact and exchange with the wine. And it's for this we will have more maturity, more concentration, more structure by the autolysis of the yeast in the bottles. For example, when you keep vintage a long time on yeast, if you say, okay, I will keep this vintage 9-10 years on yeast, it could be good, for example, each 2 years to take the bottle like this. So the bottle are like this with sediment. You bring the bottle, you do that, and you repeat like this. So you remove all the sediment inside, and finally it's like during the fermentation process in a barrel, when you practice bâtonnage. Bâtonnage, so you remove the yeast in the barrel finally, and with this removing, you will make the wine more fat, you will give more structure. And you can do that with a sparkling wine on yeast, it will be the same. So this aging is really good. And just to explain a little bit more about that, for example, there is always a difference between the half bottle and magnum. You can put the same wine inside, but so the same bottling, same disgorgement, and if you make the same tasting, these 3 bottles will have different tasting. And it's normal because I haven't got, so in the bottle is not totally full. So we have always, if we say the head volume of air inside, and it's the same volume in half bottle and magnum, but it's not the same volume of wine. So during the aging, the half bottle will aging so fast, the bottles less and the magnum less. And it's for this we will have not the same wine at the end. And the second point, it's when we keep the bottle like this on yeast, on the magnum, there is more large area to exchange. So we will have more structure, more concentration, more maturity. So it's for this, the magnum is really better to can keep a sparkling wine for this. So when we make the bottling, so the yeast will make the fermentation inside the bottles and they will dead after the fermentation. So it's always there is sediment. So to sell the clear champagne, we should make the riddling. So the riddling is the artisanal, the manual riddling is on a pupitre like this. And I have got this there. So you can put the bottle like this and you make a small rotation and inclinate the bottle slowly. And at the end, all the sediment will fall down in the neck of the bottles. And we will keep the bottle like this, so the neck down. So we said sur pointe, like this. So to practice disgorgement, so just 1 second. I'm sorry. So this is the bottle. You can see the yeast inside. Okay, so this is the dead. Yes, this is the dead yeast. When we make the bottling, we put a metallic caps on the top of the bottles. Okay, and a small bidule, a small plastic inside. So when we make the riddling, all the sediment who are there will fall down in the neck of the bottle. So we will practice disgorgement. So I will use that. So when the bottle is neck down with all the sediment, there is 6 kilo pressure inside. So we will practice disgorgement. So the disgorgement is we will use the pressure inside the bottle to expel the sediment out of the bottle. So just imagine, I will do that. So traditional disgorgement, we will up the neck of the bottle slowly, and we have bubble here, okay? And the bubble will go all along of the bottles. And when the bubble will arrive to the top of the bottles, to the neck of the bottle, we will out the caps, and the pressure will expel sediment out of the bottles. So if we open too early, the bubble is in the middle there, so we will lose the part of the wine between the caps and the bubble. And if we open too late, the bubbles arrive in touch with the sediment, and all the sediment will fall down inside the bottles, and we need to recaps and riddle again and disgorge again. So this is the disgorgement time. So this is traditional disgorgement. Now we use a machine. So we have a back with a really cold solution inside, and we will fall just the neck of the bottle in this solution. It's 27 degrees down zero. And during the traveling of the bottles in this solution, there is ice which make inside the bottles, and we can return the bottles without risk of the sediment fall down inside. And Conal, can you share the disgorgement link?
Yeah, I tried opening it. David, it's not opening somehow.
Okay.
Doesn't matter.
So I will continue to explain. So now the bottle is neck in the cold solution, so there is ice inside. We can return the bottles without the risk of the sediment fall down in the bottles. And when we out the caps, the pressure will expel the ice with all the sediment. So this is the disgorgement time. At this moment, we can add sugar or no. So there is a rotative machine. So the bottles will make 3 times the turn of the machine. So first turn, we will pump a small quantity of wine to can make the place to add the sugar inside. The second turn, we will add the quantity of sugar in centiliters. So we can control the quantity we will add to make dosage extra brut, brut, sec, demi-sec, doux. So the rules for the dosage is extra brut is from 0 to 5 grams per liters. Then 5 grams per liter to 12 grams per liters, it's brut. Then 12 to 18, it's sec. Then 18 to 30, it's extra brut, extra dry. 30 to 50, it's demi-sec, and more than 50 grams per liter, it's sweet, doux. And the bottles, so we will control the quantity we'll add, and then the bottles make a third turn just to complete the volume, to have the quantity of the good quantity of volume in the bottles. And then we will put the cork and the muselet, the weir, to keep the cork on the neck of the bottles. And the bottles are washing, and we can sell the bottles. Just imagine, more you add sugar, more you need to keep a little bit between the disgorgement and the sales, because all the sugar will fall down on the back of the bottles. So to be sure that there is a homogenization inside, it's better to keep. The quantity of sugar will impact the quality of the wine, because with this sugar, we will add a small quantity of oxidative feeling, sweetness, and finally, more you have sugar in the wine, at disgorgement time, more the aging will be fast. So it's for this, if we like to keep a bottle of champagne a long time, it's better finally to buy a Magnum, to buy a Blanc de Blanc, extra brut, without dosage, and you can keep a long time. That depends on the quality of the cork, because you need to be sure that the cork will keep the pressure inside the bottles and there is no exchange with the outside. For the aging, for the aging, for example, what is good with a sparkling wine, it's we make a fermentation in the bottles, that I explained, prise de mousse. And finally, the yeast during the fermentation in the bottle will eat all the small quantity of air there is inside the wine. So the aging is really better with the metallic caps on yeast because there is no air inside. There is not exchange with outside. So you can be sure that the aging will be only by the autolyse of the yeast. When we practice disgorgement, we will make a deadline of consumption finally of the wine, because when we open, there is a small quantity of air, so the head volume inside. So you add air in the bottles, and with the traditional cork, there is exchange. It's a really small exchange, years per year, month per month, but you have exchange. So finally, you will increase the aging and the maturation of the wine in the bottles after disgorgement, and you will increase the rapidity of the aging. More you add sugar in the wine. I don't know if everything is clear. Yes, you understand everything? Yeah. Okay. We have different quality of cork, different quality of metallic caps. So in Champagne, we are so happy to have the Champagne committees. It's the CIVC. Because the CIVC have just one interest, it's to work for champagne, not for big houses, for the grower, but the goal is really to work the champagne. And there have experimental vineyards, they have a winery for their experimental vineyard. So they try a lot of different techniques. It's for this we are always more far than the rest of the sparkling wine for the technology or something like this, because we try a lot of things. For example, before, when we practice disgorgement, sometimes there is a small development of mousse between the disgorgement machine, the dosage machine, and the cork machine. So we haven't got the same volume of air inside. And it's for this we can have small variation between each bottles of the filling. So now, for example, we practice jetting. So after the dosage machine, when the bottles arrive just before the pot the cork, we will inject a small a small touch of water, which make mousse up the mousse to the neck of the bottles, and we put the cork. So the mousse is CO2, dioxide de carbon. So we are sure that there is not air inside, and on all the bottles. So we have a regular disgorgement and a regular aging of the bottles years per years during the storage or during the storage in the cellar of the consumer. It just depends of the quantity of sugar. The quality, sorry, of the cork. Just to imagine, in the cork, there is some air too. So when we open the bottles and put the cork, so with the CIVC analysis, we know that we add the same quantity of oxygen in the wine by the cork and the disgorgement than during 10 years of aging with the cork in your cellar. So it's totally crazy. Just imagine that stay a long time on yeast, protected from oxidation, and at disgorgement time, we had the same quantity of air, of oxygen in the wine than during 10 years of aging later. It's totally crazy. But that will impact finally the characteristics of the wine and the bottles. And for this, you can have different quality. If you buy a case of champagne, you can have different quality bottle per bottles on your 6 bottles. So it's totally crazy. So this is about disgorgement, corking. What we can talk about more? You have question? If someone have question, don't hesitate to ask. I'm there to.
Yeah, David, I think we are in. I think we should start taking some questions, because we started for 1 hour and it's already 1.5 hours.
Oh, sorry.
No, it's great.
So
it's great. It's very good. It's very good because nobody would give so much time, and it's really thanks to you. So guys, we are ready to take any questions. Please kindly put your questions in the chat box, and I'll one by one we'll go to David and ask the question. Do you have any questions? Can anybody does anybody have any questions?
Sir, I do have quite a few.
Who's that?
Abhik.
Abhik, please go ahead. Go ahead.
Should I type or just ask you? Like, I believe asking will be more easy.
No,
for
ask.
me.
Please ask.
All right. So let's start with some marketing thing. So what are the top 5 USPs you will suggest me as a server when it comes to serving your, upselling your product.
Oh, sorry, I don't understand. So
I think what Abhik is trying to say is, what are the 5 reasons for champagne that somebody would buy it?
No, just particularly when it comes to like your
Oh, so his
product.
wine, his champagne.
Yes.
Okay,
As
so
a server,
yeah. So 5 reasons why anybody would have Bourdaire Gallo champagne in a restaurant.
The first reason, it's a really small production. So I'm an artisan. So my wine are really his own personality. Just imagine, I produce only 20,000 bottles per year, and Moët et Chandon produce 30 million bottles per year. So it's not the same the same way of production. It's like if you like to buy a new table for your living room, you have 2 options. You go to the artisan, which selected his wood and make you a table that you can give to your children and the rest of your family, or you can go to IKEA. And IKEA, it's not the same production, so it's not the same quality. It's just a picture just to explain. So I'm a real artisan. So you can first, it's a small production, and I'm récoltant manipulant RM. So I produce my own wine with my own grapes by myself. So this is the first reason. The second reason, the cuvée tradition, that you can see, it's 100% meunier. It's unusual in Champagne. Because it's always a blend. Because the meunier, like I said, it's the bad boy. So in the mind of a lot of grower or bigosies, champagne producer, meunier will aging so fast. So the wine will be in 3 or 4 years, it will be heavy. It really lose his fruitiness. And finally, this is a 100% meunier, so unusual in Champagne. It's 100% meunier produced on sandy soil. So this sandy soil will give a really good minerality, freshness, this sapidity, which excites
Salinity,
your
which is
palate.
the salinity.
Yes. But it's a really good acidity. It's not aggressive. It's that makes you salivate, and finally you would like to reserve and say, oh shit, finally the bottle is totally empty. I need a second bottle. So it's a good way. So this is the third reason. It's only on sound. So the other reason, it's extra brut without dosage. So no sugar added at disgorgement. So finally, then I explain the sugar is used to make the wine drinkable. So sometimes you can have the Pinot Noir with too much structure. The sharpness could be like austerity, or the Chardonnay will be too fresh, too aggressive. And if the Pinot Meunier in the blend don't make the harmony inside, the sugar will make the harmony. So if this is extra brut, no dosage. So there is no makeup finally to make the wine drinkable. You can feel the total characteristics finally of the grape varieties, Meunier, with this natural fruitiness and sweetness and sweetness, but natural, not by addition of sugar. And you will have the total explanation finally of the terroir, of the soil, with this sapidity, which makes you salivate. So you can understand finally perfectly the wine, because you have all the story to explain. And finally, the latest finally reason that you will really enjoy it, that will make you salivate, excited your palate, and you can share with food, with food from the sea, with the salinity, or with if there is a small quantity. Well, you are in India, so it's complicated to speak about spicy feeling with India people, because we have not the same level of spicy feeling. I can try with Konal in New Delhi. So yeah, but you just need to. I think sparkling wine in India, it's not usual. You just need to how explain? To take it's not a still wine. You have a sparkling wine, so you will have a bubble. So if the bubble are too aggressive, the wine is perhaps young, or there is perhaps young. Normally, if there is too much bubble, it's too young. But you will increase finally the characteristics of the wine and the soil, the terroir. So sparkling wine is a different approach of the tasting than a still wine.
Sorry, wonderfully said, David. I mean, I have the reason I relate so much to what he's saying is because I have seen and I have tasted his wines. I've been to his vineyard. I mean, literally tasted fruit of his of production, and sorry, and finding 100% Meunier is very rare in Champagne. Okay, you'll get 100% Noir, you'll get 100% Chardonnay, but you might it's not easy. Secondly, as he said, finding 100% Meunier on sandy is again rarest of the rare things. Generally, what happens in wine world is that there are either big houses or there are small artisanal winemakers like David. Um, and their wines represent the personality of the winemaker as well. Generally what the big houses do is that they mass produce so that it is acceptable to everybody out there in the market generally. Okay, but as David's motto is no dosage, so he there's no dosage in his wine, so that is a representation of his personality itself which goes in the wine, and that is what makes it a unique champagne compared to the rest of the champagnes that there are out there.
So
Anybody
Conal,
else?
there is a question on the chat. Would like I answer a question per question? Yeah?
I didn't.
Because
didn't
I see there is a question of what kind of grapes used to rosé champagne?
David, this is what kind of grapes used in rosé champagne and difference in champagne and sparkling wine on the basis of taste, color, and alcohol.
Rosé champagne is a special wine too, unusual of course, because in Champagne we have the possibility to make pink wine by blending of white and red wine. It's unusual, it's totally forbidden everywhere, but in Champagne we can, because thanks Mrs. Veuve-Clicquot, because in the archive of Mrs. Veuve-Clicquot, we can find that she practiced blending of white wine and red wine to make rosé. So, of course, to make red wine or rosé de Saignée, we need to use grapes with red skin, so Pinot Meunier or Pinot Noir. Usually it's Pinot Noir which are used to make the red wine, to make the rosé champagne, because the Pinot Noir have more structure. My pink champagne, my rosé champagne is 100% Meunier too, and it's rosé by blending of white and red wine from Pinot Meunier to make the color. I don't know if you know the difference between rosé d'assemblage and rosé de Saignée. Rosé d'assemblage is blending of white and red wine. Rosé de Saignée, it's you pick up the grapes, you crush the berry and separate the berry from the rest of the structure of the grapes, and you begin a fermentation, a red wine fermentation. And you will check the increasement of the color during the beginning of fermentation. And when you have the level of color you would like to make the pink wine, rosé de Saignée, you will separate the liquid from the skin to stop finally the extraction of the color, but continue the alcoholic fermentation in a tank. And this is the difference between rosé by blending and rosé de Saignée. Rosé Saignée, it's yes, we separate the juice from the grapes when we have the color we would like to have, the pink color we would like to have. And
okay, and I think there was another extension to this question itself. One second, I'm just trying to see. The grapes used in rosé, a difference in champagne and sparkling wine on the basis of taste, color, and alcohol.
The difference of in champagne and sparkling wine.
Difference between champagne and sparkling wine.
There is different method to produce sparkling wine. There is a traditional method, champagne method. It's by making a fermentation in the bottles after the bottling by addition of sugar and yeast. You can make method Charma. Method Charma, so you start alcoholic fermentation in a tank. You control the fall down of the sugar, and when you have the quantity of sugar you like, you put this wine in fermentation in the bottles, and the alcoholic fermentation finish in the bottles. So you will have low level of pressure inside the bottle, low level of bubble, but it's Method Charma, it's just the alcoholic fermentation which finished in the bottles and created a little sparkling wine. And you have the production of sparkling wine by you put the wine in the bottles and you add CO2 from the bottles of CO2 and you make the wine sparkling.
Yeah. Basically, champagne can only be produced in Champagne, number one. And there are certain grapes that go in making champagne, and champagne can only be produced by the traditional method, which is the Méthode Champenois. There are
the other one is called Crémant. Crémant. For example, Crémant, it's a traditional process, but the minimum legal to stay on yeast in Crémant production is only 8 months. So it's less, and usually the Crémant, there is no the same pressure, it's not 6 kilo pressure inside, it's a little bit, it's 4.5. It's for this, it's not the same bottle, it's not the same weight of bottles, there is a lot of things different. Just to compare, for example, there is a region, I love Italian sparkling wine, and if you would like to compare a champagne with Italian sparkling wine, you can compare with Franciacorta or Trento. Yeah. But you cannot compare with Prosecco. Because Prosecco is a Charma process. It's not traditional process. Just to imagine en fait, finally the difference between each.
Yeah, great. Okay, another question is from, one second, Shushma. What's the temperature at this place where the champagne vineyards are present? What's the range of prices? What's the temperature during the summer there? I'll just unmute Sushma so that she can answer.
During the summer, the average temperature it's between 32 to 36. Sometimes you have a canicule to 42, 43. Since a few years, we have this type of problem because during the summer, sometimes there is no wind, really high temperature, and we lose a part of the grapes because the berry burns to the sun. And we lose a part of grapes. The berries finally dry, and it's a problem because we lose a part of production. It's another problem during the press because this dry part we collect finally a part of juice and the best part. So it's a real problem. I forgot to speak about the pressing process, for example, because in Champagne we have this characteristics. It's we produce white wine, but with red grapes. So we have a really special press program because we always use a small pressure but regular just to extract the juice, and we cannot press too fast because we crush the berry and we will extract color, so it's not good. And we don't need to press too slowly because there is a beginning of maceration in the press and we will extract color too. So we have a palier, so we have level of pressure, and we practice retrousse. So we make the first press and then we return the grapes to press in other way to try to extract the juice of all the berry, but not the green berry. It's a really special program press. And for example, just to imagine the chargement of the press, the pressing and dischargement of the press, it's 4 hours.
Okay. Abhi, yeah, please go ahead. Please.
And what is it what's the height of the place from the mean sea level?
Sorry, what is the price?
What's the height of the place from the mean sea level?
What's the altitude? The altitude
of the vineyard?
Yeah.
The vineyard is between 150 to 280, 300 meters from the level sea.
Okay, Abhik, you had some other question as well, and after that I'll go to Ritvik.
Yes, sir. So my first question is, like, when it comes to the grapes and the vineyard management, does the Champagne grapes has to follow some strict aspect regulations like southerly aspect or northerly aspect or east side aspect? Because as far as I know, like, the grapes cannot reach more than certain amount of sugar content in that.
Sorry, I have some cutting, so.
Abhik, repeat yourself once. I think there was your voice went.
So when it comes to vineyard management and the Champagne grapes that you use, so does the aspect of the altitude or the vineyard play any role?
Yeah, yes, because we cannot plant vine everywhere in Champagne. So all the plot of vineyard need to to answer from characteristics, special characteristics. So it's for this, sometimes you can see the vineyard and there is vine and there is no vine, there is again vine. It depends of the soil. There is a lot of different characteristics. It's the nature of the soil, altitude, of course, exposition, origin, if there is a vineyard before or not. There is a lot of the, how comment on dit, faune, of the micrologist characteristics of the soil. There is a lot of characteristics. So we cannot plant vineyard everywhere in Champagne. There is a real rules to control that.
All right. And the second and the last question is like, since you took the handover from of the business from your elders, was there any changes that you had to make with the dynamicity of the market, like when it comes to production of your wine?
So sorry,
So,
I'm sorry.
so what he's saying, David, is after you took over from your parents,
Yeah.
you know, your business from your parents, what all changes have you made as a winemaker, as the
Wow,
owner?
a lot of things. First, when I finish my studies and I come back to my parents' home, we was at the cooperative. For example, in Pouillon, it's my grandfather who built the cooperative with two other growers, so we was at the cooperative. But during the few decades, the cooperative increased. Finally, the 4,000 capacities press changed by 12,000, so we cannot press only all grapes and make our own wine. And finally, when I came back, I worked with my parents and delivered the grapes to the cooperative. And finally, I built my own press after the harvest 2001. So I became independent grower in 2002. So before I just put the label on the bottles with my name, but without my wine inside. So I'm an independent grower. So I'm just a student because I have only 18 harvests back me. So I always discover and try a lot of things. By this building of my press, I can discover all my plot of vineyard because with the big capacity of presses in the cooperative, we deliver grapes and they put all the meunier together and separate nothing. So on my own press, on my press center, I have 3 presses of 4,000 kilos. So I can separate the grape varieties, of course, but I separate the village. So the meunier from Pouillon are not the same quality from meunier from Hermonville, Villafranqueux, or Thiel, and I will separate the rootstock. So just imagine on the same plot of vineyard, for example, same soil, I have the same grapes, meunier, but I haven't got the same rootstock. So the rootstock, some rootstocks stay on the first meters of the soil, some rootstock go deeper. So we are not on the same level of the soil, so not the same characteristics. So I will dissecate all the vineyard to have the biggest quantity of samples different to can make the blend and to can create each cuvée and to have a regular quality. So this is one thing I change. In the same time, my parents know finally easy production because there is no weather problem. There is no problem to sell the grapes to the big houses, not like now. And I started finally to work like not like conventional, you know, with a chemical produce, everything like this. I plant grass in the vineyard. I started to produce like an organic producer. So I changed that in the vineyard. So our vineyard are now certified organic. So there is a lot of changement like this. My parents produce more grapes than we need. Now we produce the quantity we need to make the wine and to try to make the good wine. So there is a lot of changement during the last 25 years. Like this.
Okay, Ritvik,
Thank you, Mr. David.
Thanks to you.
Ritvik, please start.
Yeah, thank you very much. Good evening, everyone. Et bonsoir, Monsieur David.
Bonsoir.
Et merci pour partager votre connaissance dans ce sujet. Et I just wanted to ask a small question, a very general question about Champagne. So, like, there are many wine producing regions in the world, like with the France being in the top, and even like Bordeaux being the most largest producer of wines, be it still wines or sparkling wines. But why is I just wanted to ask, why is Champagne, the wines produced in the Champagne region, why did it stand out from the crowd, like being one of the most expensive wines? Like there are a lot of other sparkling wines, be it in California or the state or other places, but why is it Champagne? What is the X factor which makes it the creme de la creme or the black gold of wines, and also a symbol of luxury? Thank you.
So it's more expensive just because everything is more expensive in Champagne for the production. So it's totally crazy. So it's not because your car is red that it's a Ferrari and it's the price of a Ferrari. But unfortunately in Champagne, explain. So I don't talk about. So the cost of the vineyard is really expensive. The cost of the production is more expensive. So usually, I don't know if you can say that, but usually the average cost of production for one bottle of champagne, which are sales after 15 months, it's between 8 to 9 euro. So if you buy my bottle 20 euro and if you buy a Veuve Clicquot at 50 euro, I can say it's the same wine, but you just pay the name, the brand name. But there is it's not the same production. So, a lot of things are more expensive. For example, the label. The label, so by the printer. If I make my label in the Champagne area, and if I make my label 500 kilometers more far, it's a 50% difference of the price. Why? Because we are in Champagne, so it's more expensive. But it's like this. So you need to go and try to find not cheapest prices for the cost production, but to try the good balance between the prices and the quality. And it's for which it's more expensive. Just that I explained, for example, the bottles of champagne, the weight of the empty bottles, it's really heavy, so it's not the same cost. Some customers said me, why the half bottle is not the half price of the bottles? Because the empty bottles, it's not the half price, it's more expensive. And there is a lot of things like this. So yes. So when you go to in a hotel, so you have a 1 star, 2 star, 5 stars hotel. So it's always a room, but it's not the same quality of the produce you use inside. It's not the same cost. It's not the same profit too. But this is the difference between. And we practice long aging at the same time. There is a lot of things that makes champagne more expensive.
Je comprends. Merci beaucoup.
Yeah, je vous en prie.
Okay. Okay. Vidhi, I'll just unmute you. Vidhi, can you go ahead with your question, please? Okay, I'm just trying to unmute you. Unmute yourself now.
Hello.
Okay. No, not happening. Ask to unmute. Okay, I think. Okay, let me just read your question. 1 second. Bottled champagne is accident prone due to pressure exerted by the bubbles. Any special precautions are taken for the same?
Yes, always keep on yeast, not on yeast, but always keep like this. So the problem with the bottles for sparkling, for example, when the bottles are produced from the bottling producer, they can accept a pressure of 42 kilo per inside. But we said the glass have memories. So each time the bottle shock, you reduce the capacity of the glass, and more there is shock, more there is a potential of explosion at the end, because the pressure inside was still 6 kilo, but the capacity of accepting this pressure reduce each time you shock the bottles. It's for this during the process, disgorgement, bottling, storage, labeling, or shipment, we try to reduce this number of shock to can keep all the resistance potential of pressure of the bottles.
Thank you, sir.
Okay, Mr. Manish Sati, welcome first of all. Do you want to? Yeah, how are you?
I'm good. I'm good.
Okay, please, tell about your question.
Like my question is like we all know that the term champagne is used for the wines which comes exclusively from the Champagne region of France. But if your wines falls in the category of generic wines, we can name our wines in the name of any famous wine region for the marketing practices. But what are the legal formalities country has to follow to take names like Champagne and all? Though they are not made in the Champagne region of France, but especially in US, these practices are going on. So what are the legal formalities they have to follow?
So it's the problem with the champagne name, and it's for this the CIVC try to protect the champagne name because it's used for a lot of things. For example, when there is a fragrance named champagne, for me it's not a problem because it just would like to say, oh, there is a freshness, the elegance of champagne. But if you accept it to do that, there is a lot, thousand produce that the CIVC stopped. There is lemonade, no lemonade, sparkling sweet sirop produced from Russia was named champagne. So it's for this we try to protect it. There is a problem with USA because there is a really old company who produce sparkling wine in USA. And it's for this, so champagne is totally forbidden on sparkling wine produced in USA, except I think it's 15 or 16 houses who they said, okay, we produce champagne since 150 years ago. So it's just, comment on dit, intolerance. It's accepted just for this small quantities of producer because they use since a long time. But now it's totally forbidden.
Yeah, I think in California especially this practice was quite rampant, wherein you had Californian champagne, Californian Chablis, terms like these, Californian Chianti as well. I think so. These terms were coined, but I think it was in the year 2005 or 6, I'm not sure, wherein the law was passed that champagne word will not be used anymore. From 2006 onwards. So ones which are already being produced before 2006 can carry that name. But after 2006, I'm not sure about the year. I think it's either 2006 or somewhere like that. Then they cannot have the name champagne. As a matter of fact, there's a very nice story. In India, the first winery that was put up in India, I think it was back in 84, 85, whatever, was called Champagne Indaj. Okay. And then CIVC came knocking on their doors and said, take this off. Then it was named Chateau Indaj. So that's the protection of the name Champagne. It's very strong.
Yeah. So for example, we started by the protection of the process because on a lot of crément or sparkling wine, it's right méthode champenoise, champagne method, and now it's traditional method. Just to don't make a mistake between mistake in front of the customer. It's a traditional method, not champagne method, just to protect. And just to imagine this year, for example, an importer in UK called me to try to make a special cuvée of champagne with his brand name. Say, why not? And he say, oh no, you are too expensive. So I find another company who will supply the champagne, but it was located in Jura. So it was a crément of Jura, and he would like to label champagne. So it's totally forbidden, impossible to do. So there is always people who would like to make more money just with the name champagne.
Okay. Any other questions? Anybody?
No.
Are there any questions? No. Right. Okay. I think.
Can I end up one last one?
Yeah. Please go ahead.
Yeah.
I was wondering, like, how much experience it takes to be a riddler.
Riddler, right?
The riddling, what's it called?
The riddling.
Riddling, yeah.
Riddling, yeah.
Yeah.
So and how much experience does it? So how much experience does it take to be a professional riddler?
I don't understand. Sorry. How much?
So
how much of experience he's saying?
So how do you become a riddler? How do you become a professional riddler? So let's say somebody who does riddling.
No.
How do you become?
It's machine. Now it's
nowadays,
machine.
nowadays nobody.
Yeah, now it's machine. Yeah.
There is no
because when
riddling.
you like to make the reading by hand, you shoot to riddle the bottles one time in the morning, one time in the afternoon during 1 month. Now you put the bottles in metallic cases. So
and it's
you
a machine.
put like this. Yes, and the machine makes the reading, so you can program the machine. So at home we have this type of machine, so we practice the reading during 1 week. When I was student, I work in a cooperative in Reims to make money because I was student, and I put the bottles in the cases. So when I arrive on the Monday, the bottles are in the cellar, in the chalk cellar since a few years. So we put the bottles in the metallic cases on Monday. The reading is Tuesday, Wednesday, disgorging on Thursday, and sales on Friday. So it's totally crazy. So the bottles stay quiet during few years in the cellar, and in 1 week there was reading, disgorge, labeling, spade, and there is a expedition. And finally on Sunday you can open the bottles. It's totally crazy. But it's a program, so you can reading the time you would like to do, and it depends of the form of the bottles, because for example, a Comte de Champagne, the neck is really like this and makes that, so it's more complicated to the sediment to go out and finish in the neck of the bottle. So the reading is more complicated. You need to take more time. You can add when you make the bottling, you can add chemical produce inside to make more easy flocculation of sediment, and finally the sediment fall down more fast in the neck of the bottle, so you can practice reading during 2 days, and you can disgorge as fast as possible the bottles and cells, and finally sometimes the people can reading, disgorge, sell the bottles, and you will pay finally the process, the cork, everything, after the customer have paid the bottles. It's totally crazy because you can go so fast. But with the wine, it's like with cooking, so you need to take time. So if you have two options, so you can have all your ingredients, make you cook by yourself, or you can go to a supermarket and buy frozen food, put in the microwave, and in 2 minutes it's okay. It's not the same process, it's not the same quality, not the same final test.
Okay, I think David, thank you so much for
thanks to you.
For all the time that you've given. We were looking for an hour session and we've stretched to 2 hours. You've taken.
Sorry, too long.
No. It's a good thing. It's a good thing.
It's actually
You've given so much of your time. We've heard from the horse's mouth. I mean, somebody who's doing it right there in that region. I'm just going to write this email address in the chat, so please send me your name, phone number and email address, and I will issue the certificate for participation to you guys. So just copy this email address, and I will send it to you, your participation certificate. And saying that, yesterday, was it this morning? Yeah, yesterday I called up David and I said, David, where are you? So he said, I am in London. So I said, oh my God, what is he doing in London? We have a session. So he went to London 4 o'clock in the morning, reached at 11, delivered something, came back by evening. I said, I'm here, I'll be on time. No problem.
That's amazing.
And he was here on time, and everything went really well. Thank you very much, David. Number one.
Thanks to you.
And we will come up with more sessions like this very soon with David and others. We've got certain other sessions lined up from Grape Expectations to you all. Another session would be in the first week of January. I'm not going to reveal whom it's going to be with or with what it's going to be with. That's going to be a surprise. We are a WSET program provider for level 1 and level 2. If you have any interest, please let us know. We are conducting sessions in January and subsequently every month from there. Thank you so much for everybody joining me. Champagne, David, this is going to open today, okay, for you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for giving your time.
Thanks to you. And I hope the next time we can make the tasting in front in
absolutely
India together. Yes, I hope.
I want to do that. Let this all sort of finish up, and you come to India. We'll do a tasting in a hotel. We'll invite the hotels. We'll invite the wine clubs. We'll invite everybody, and we'll do a tasting
with pleasure. With very pleasure. If you have more questions during the night, or don't hesitate to send me an email, and I will answer with real pleasure. So don't hesitate. For everybody, send me a question, and I will answer with pleasure.
Thank you, David.
Many thanks.
Thank you so much.
Thanks to you. Bye
Au
bye.
revoir.
Thank
Au
you.
revoir.
Thank you.
Au revoir.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Thank
Thank
you.
you. Bye.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you all.
Thank
See you
you.
soon. Bye bye.
Thank you, sir.